Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to my faithful regulars and to all you newcomers tuning in for the first time today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Peter Doherty, a Catholic priest and a psychologist who absolutely loves exploring the beautiful bridge between psychology and spirituality. For years, these worlds eyed each other with warily. But isn't it strange? Healthy psychology actually deepens our spiritual lives. And authentic spirituality, built on a strong psychological foundation, gives us real meaning and bounce-back power. In this quick podcast, we will dive into the gospel reading for the following week ahead. It's perfect for preachers crafting homilies, teachers unpacking scripture, or anyone hungry for deeper insights. If you're craving more, check out my earlier episodes. They're full of gems. I weave in fresh psychology research, top scripture scholarship, and cultural wisdom to bring the Gospels right into our everyday lives. I see the Scriptures as timeless companions for our faith journey. The biblical writers saw history through a spiritual lens, not just like modern timelines. The Bible isn't merely a history book. It's packed with layers of wisdom on our identity, faith, and souls. There's always fresh treasure to discover. If this resonates with you, hit the subscribe button. Drop a question or comment below. I'd love to chat and hear your thoughts. Share it with friends and family walking the path of faith and growth. And if you're on YouTube, subscribe there too and tell me where you're joining in from. At this time, I'd like to offer a shout out to my listeners in Singapore. Thank you for joining. I appreciate hearing from you. One of the techniques that Jesus used was situations that the people would be familiar with. The readings today are no exception. The people would be familiar with the gatekeeper for the sheep. To give you some background, most villages had a walled-in area where the local shepherds could bring their flocks for the night. The shepherds would take their turn guarding the gate to make sure that no one came in to hurt any of the sheep. I'm thinking of people who might want to have a lamb chops for supper. This arrangement allowed the shepherds to spend time with their families. In the morning, the shepherds would come and literally call their sheep out by name. This teaching focuses on the protective aspect of our God. This is not the only example of God's protective stance. In Matthew chapter 23, verse 37, Jesus laments over Jerusalem, stating, "How often I have longed to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing." In John chapter 10, verse 11 to 15, Jesus calls himself the Good Shepherd, who lays down his life for his sheep, knows them by name, and guards them against danger. This is one of the clearest gospel images of his protective love, contrasting him with the hired worker who runs away when threat appears. In Matthew chapter 18, verse 12 to 14, and Luke chapter 15, verse 37, Jesus tells of the Good Shepherd, who leaves the 99 in search for the one lost sheep. This parable highlights his protective concern for individuals who are vulnerable, wandering, or broken. Do you have a sense of God's protective love? Sadly, many do not feel this protective love, and more than once feel abandoned or wonder if God actually cares or has a hands-off approach. The Gospels challenge this notion and point out a God who is actively involved in his creation. God's promise of a protected love feels empty when we see people experiencing danger, pain, and difficult trials. In most cases, the pain they are experiencing is not from anything they have done. Life can feel unfair at times. There are many books written on the subject. One is When Bad Things Happen to Good People, written by Harold S. Kushner. His book is classic, a modern reflection on suffering and faith, written after Kushner's son died of a rare disease. Another example is Why Do Good People Suffer Bad Things?, written by T.R. Williams. A more recent work exploring why suffering comes to morally upright people and how faith, growth, and meaning can emerge from it is entitled A Grace Disguised, How the Soul Grows Through Loss, written by Jerry Sister. This book is a Christian reflection on grief and suffering, written after the author's losses of several family members, asking God why he allows good people to experience devastating loss. I suspect many of us are not fully aware of all that we have been protected from. Nonetheless, many people do question if God truly loves and protects his people. These people may feel a disconnect from the words of Jesus to their own experiences. Some may go as far as not being able to trust God, even believing that bad things in their lives are a result of divine judgment. Unfortunately, people who have had punitive childhoods are most susceptible to this view. Critical and controlling childhood experiences can have a major impact on how we see God. It is hard to trust and believe in a loving God if our earliest childhood memories are of judgment and punishment. Even if they want to be trusting, it doesn't come naturally to them. Adult children of alcoholic parents are especially prone to trust issues. Many adult children of alcoholics do struggle with trusting in God, though not all. Their difficulty usually stems from how chronic family dysfunction reshapes their view of authority, love, and reliability. Adult children of alcoholic parents often grow up with inconsistent, unpredictable care, so they may internalize the idea that love is conditional, or I must earn safety mentality. This distorts their image of God. They may see the divine as distant, harsh, or indifferent, rather than tender and trustworthy. S. Naijan Rodrigo wrote in his 2009 dissertation entitled, How Religious Education and Christian Spirituality Can Restore Lost Trust and Foster Interdependent Relationships Among Adult Children of Alcoholics. He focused on the tendency of children of alcoholics to have difficulty trusting significant people in their lives, and he made recommendations for their healing. People can also lose their trust in God's protective love when they experience something painful in their lives. I'm not suggesting that they ignore their pain, but rather focus on what God may be teaching us or calling us to do. God is focused on both our personal and spiritual development. We may not always understand the loss of something important to us, and I recognize that it won't be easy. Sometimes we may need a spiritual director or a therapist or a good friend to help us work through the issue. We may learn that we are more resilient than we thought. God's protection is not a removal of the problem, but rather inviting us to growth and maturity. We need to resist the urge to become bitter. Bitterness stops the growth process. Sometimes choosing to be forgiving and striving for reconciliation can help. There are many theories developed to help explain the process of loss and grief. For example, the dual process model developed by doctors Margaret Strobe and Hank Schut in 2010. This model views grieving as an oscillation between loss-orientated coping, focusing on the pain, memories, and yearning, and the restoration-orientated coping, handling life's changes, new roles, and practical demands. The key clinical takeaway is that healthy adaptation involves flexible movement between these poles rather than just getting over the loss. Another model is the reconstruction theory, developed by Robert Niemeyer, where the individual attempts to reaffirm or reconstruct a world of meaning that has been challenged by the loss. There are other theories, but these are two indicate that we can recover and grow deeply in our humanity rather than being overwhelmed and paralyzed. In conclusion, God's protection doesn't remove personal trials, and we will still experience challenges and obstacles in our life. Let us take courage with the reassurance that we have heard in the scriptures today and live our life with less fear. Thank you for joining me. Next Sunday, May 3rd, 2026, we will be reflecting on John chapter 14, verse 1 to 12, where Jesus focused on reassuring his disciples that good things will happen if those who stay on the path. New episodes are released every Sunday for the next week's gospel. A big thank you to Heather Patel Doherty and Richard Coulombe for their wonderful help. Questions or comments? Please email me at peter.doherty, that's DOHERTYOMI, @gmail.com. May God richly bless you.